Hi, I'm Jane Rudolph.
And I'm Monsignor Charles Meinhof.
I'm Father Joe Glass. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
We promised that we'd see you next year, and we'd like to wish everyone a very happy and a healthy new year, 1988, and maybe this time you'll stick to your resolutions.
Oh, I think they will. You know, one group I wish would make a nice resolution are the senior citizens. It becomes a touchy time this New Year's, and some of them get kind of nervous about the future. Don't be nervous. Look to the future with a great deal of happiness and make some good resolutions.
I heard an interesting thing a few weeks ago. Peace be with you is the phrase said the most on the lips of Jesus in the New Testament, and throughout the Bible it is said, guess how many times? Peace be with you, be not afraid, in the Bible 365 times. One for every day of the year. So already, if you're apprehensive, the Lord has already said, peace be with you for every day of 1988.
And tonight, as we start out a new year on Reel to Reel, you're going to hear voices raised in song from the most incredible city of music, Vienna.
Art Gallagher has something special for us in Art's Review. He pursues the idea of where the wild things are.
Father Francis Meehan has a piece about Star Wars and arms reduction, and on the other side of the coin, Father John Frey will be talking about increasing vocations in the Camden diocese.
Speaking of vocations, tonight we start off on a three-part series here on Reel to Reel, celebrating vocations for the Diocese of Camden. Their vocation week runs from January 10th to January 16th. Now, we found incredibly different backgrounds of people who were on the road to either priesthood or sisterhood.
It's very hard to say where a vocation begins, who knows, but many people think of it only as a career. Well, indeed, it is a career, but a vocation career in religious life is one that deals with persons, prayer, and things.
St. Charles Seminary in Overbrook, Pennsylvania projects a peaceful, pious air, the perfect setting for the first steps to religious life. But the image of a young man planning to enter the priesthood since altar boy days is not the only case. Frank Brennan, a native of Belmar, New Jersey, who pursued his vocation after high school in 1974, took a leave of absence several years later.
After I left the seminary the first time, I was in for almost approximately 4.5 years. I ended up going into the travel industry. And with that, I worked as a travel agent and also as a Hawaii sales manager for a local company in New Jersey called Haddon Tours. It was very, very exciting. It was very exciting. That was probably, as far as my memories of being out in the working world, the chance to go to Hawaii several times and to meet various people and just to see all the islands was definitely exciting.
With such an intriguing career, what was missing?
Basically, it was a question of not being able to shut the door. When I had originally left the seminary the first time, I was very content with what I was doing, a little tired of school, but very content with basically the idea of being a priest. I guess my earliest recollection of wanting to be a priest is definitely grammar school when I was an older boy. And what happened is, I guess it really focused when I was a senior in high school. I decided, you know, that's when you have to make a career move, and what are you going to do? So there was those thoughts, and I thought, well, I thought about it long enough, why not try it? The first doubts, I guess, were just that I hadn't experienced enough of life itself, which is not true for all people, but for me, I really felt it. They were the doubts that I had, that I didn't want to wake up at 40 years of age one day and say, you know, why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that? I wanted to go out and experience life a little bit fuller, so I could bring it back, and my priesthood, my personal priesthood, would be more enriched.
Frank is currently a first-year theology student at St. Charles. Although his decision to return required confidence, he must still make allowances, as he's had to adjust from his career to the seminary in 3 short months.
It's a time of adjustment, just getting back into the whole realm of school and studying and interpersonal relationships, being with a lot of younger men in areas like that. I think without prayer, I think that's why there's a lot of lost people in the world, because they don't take time to reflect. They don't build a relationship with God. And I think that's what prayer is all about. You know, not only in the sacraments, but outside the sacraments too, on a daily basis. Although I think the importance, you mentioned sacraments, I think the importance of priesthood, or one of the attractions of priesthood, is that you are with people at the most intimate times of life, whether it be baptism at birth, or weddings at the beginning of a marriage, or funerals at death. I think within the discernment this time around comes the spiritual growth. You know, comes the idea of looking at what I have done in the last 8 years or whatever, and applying that personally to prayer, and then being able to be a comfort for others, to be there for others.
Also on the threshold of priesthood is Joe Adamson. Although Joe often visits St. Charles near his home in South Jersey, he is attending Christ the King Seminary in New York State. In his 40s, Joe has worked in marketing and advertising and has an impressive volunteer record. In fact, it was his volunteer career that eventually changed his life.
And what began to occur to me was, over a period of time, I was looking forward to and enjoying my volunteer work more than I was my regular work, which I always enjoyed very much, but there was a difference in the priorities.
His work in advertising soon became less important.
Just a job. That's a very good way of putting it. I always enjoyed it. I was very good at what I did, but there was always something missing.
Joe found that something from an unexpected source when he met with the pastor of St. Peter's in Merchantville, New Jersey.
He said, but what I'd like you to consider is, have you ever thought of priesthood? And of course that was a slam kind of a thing, because the last thing in the world I had been thinking about was priesthood. I mean, here I am, 44, 45, whatever I was at the time, and that, I think, was one of the first responses. I said, you know, I'm too old to be involved with anything like that. And that's when he mentioned to me that there were a lot of people who were coming in later in life.
After serious deliberation, Joe embarked on the path to priesthood, fulfilling the emptiness he once felt. Yet there are problems involved.
That Joe Adamson, nice, gentle person who you can come and sit and talk to, now has a religious aspect to him. I didn't know if that would mesh. That was the ongoing problem, and I think it's still something that concerns me.
Once enrolled in the seminary, Joe is now in his third year. He made an effort to adjust to the hectic pace of fellow students who were 20 years younger.
What I think says it best is I find myself as a calming factor to them, and I tap into the energy that they bring. I think what people most want in a priest is probably what I would want most in a priest. I think they have to be a good person, a gentle person, a compassionate person, an open person, who can put themselves aside when someone comes and they're in need. I know people who have a lot more than I do, money-wise, talent-wise, and everything else, but they're not at peace with themselves. They're not enjoying themselves. And I think the biggest indication that where I am right now is right is the fact that I've never been more challenged in my life, but I've never been more at peace in my life either.
I know that age has nothing to do with it as a factor for religious vocation, nor in taste for music. But I was glad to hear my taste for rock music heightened by Kyrie eleison.
And next we were going to have part 2 of the Camden series, but there's much more to come tonight. Please stay with us.
Since 1981, Reel to Reel has been proclaiming the good news by bringing you stories of Christian faith in action. We do it by roaming the Delaware Valley, searching for people of faith, hope, and charity.
But like all modern media, it is an expensive proposition. If you're a new viewer, or if you've enjoyed Reel to Reel for many years, we'd like to thank you for watching and invite you to participate by actively supporting the show.
With costs rising all around us, we need your financial support. A donation of $5, $10, $20, or whatever you can send will help to keep us on the air.
Send your contributions to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, PA 19103. And thank you.
Hello, I'm Gary Maddox. When I played with the Phillies, reading the pitcher gave me the advantage. But life is not a game. To give yourself the advantage, you have to be able to read. To get the help you need, call the Mayor's Commission on Literacy at 686-8652. Learn to read. It will change your life.
Well, am I disappointed? I've got a misprint on my paper. I thought our next guest was a vacation director and was going to set me up with a week in the Bahamas, but it turns out he's a vocation director, Father John Frey, vocation director for the Camden Diocese. John, welcome to the set of Reel to Reel.
Thank you very much.
John, and you've been in this job now, I know, only about a year. You're fairly new to it. How are you settling into the vocations job?
Well, I have found it a very surprising ministry. It was the last thing I was expecting to be doing at this point in my life after 17 years of ministry. But I have found it very exciting and very fascinating.
Oh, that's great to hear, because I think most people's first instinct when they hear today about vocations is not excitement, but more of a depression. And everyone kind of reacts that numbers are down and we're not getting the numbers of candidates for priesthood, diaconate, or sisterhood that we were getting in the past. How do you feel about that whole numbers game?
Well, I think it's true. The numbers are down, and I don't think they will probably increase that much in the volume of years ago, like the 60s. But I have been fascinated in the year that I've been in this ministry that there is this steady stream of people coming in, inquiring about church ministry. They just know something is going on inside of them, and they have to get a handle on it. They have to do something about it, and they're coming in a steady stream.
All right, so the numbers are not anything we should panic about as a church, huh?
Not me. I've just been excited that God's still moving and working in his people. Maybe not in hordes, but he's still moving, and they're coming.
All right. How do you find God working? What do you look for in a candidate? What are some signs or characteristics that you try to focus in on?
Okay, well, fundamentally, the basic things we look for is just average good health, average intelligence, a growing relationship with the Lord, a growing prayer life. These are the kind of fundamental things that you right away kind of look for. But then I look for also people who are excited about being alive, excited about life, excited about the possibilities for themselves and their fellow human beings. People are in touch with what's going on. They watch the evening news, they read the papers, but they still see possibilities. And I'm excited about that because you can tell the possibilities they're seeing are because of their relationship and their belief in God.
And so God is very central, this unfolding plan of salvation. Huh?
Yeah.
Kind of optimists, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. All right. What are some ways we can help in your ministry? I ask that only because I know in our diocese that's a big recurring theme, the Diocese of Trenton. Our vocation director, Father Ed Griswold, is always saying, I'm not the only vocation director, that we are all, as members of church, kind of vocation directors.
Well, he's right on target. The vocation director is not the only person. We just heard Joe Adamson, a 47-year-old gentleman. When he was 44 years of age, he had his own business. He was involved in volunteer work for Contact, a crisis intervention program for people to call in who are thinking of suicide or whatever. He goes to his pastor to kind of open up a possibility of ministry for his fellow parishioners and to see if he maybe can just give a presentation on Contact on a Sunday afternoon. And in the middle of that whole conversation, his pastor leans over and says, Joe, did you ever think of becoming a priest? And of course, that just kind of touched something in this man, as you heard in his interview. I think that's what we need to do. We need to invite, personal invitation. You get a gut feeling when you see this lector that's always, you know, ministering at your Mass, or this Eucharistic minister, or one of the CCD teachers, or this high school senior, or this fellow who's in college, or this girl who's in college, or maybe she's a nurse, and these people still haven't made a real vocational decision, and you get this gut feeling. I say go for it, invite them. Well, they may say, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you find it scares them off? Is there a risk there?
I wrote a letter to one of our fellows who just began college. It was one of those times when I didn't go with my gut feeling, you see, so it was still there, so I figured I better write him. And I was telling him, you know, the great things that I see in him and all that, and I said, while you're up there, why don't you think of priesthood? Now, of course, he wrote back, and now I was nervous to see what his response would be. And he wrote back and he thanked me for my letter because he doesn't get much mail. He thanked me for all the great things I said about him, and he said, you won't believe this, he said, but I have thought of priesthood.
And that
I would have
marvelous.
never known that,
Yeah.
but it was a gut feeling.
It's a direct invitation. John, thanks so much for being here and sharing your thoughts. Good luck with the Vocations Week coming up in the Camden Diocese, and good luck with the new ministry in your life as vocation director.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to have you here. And now, Monsignor and Jane, back to you.
What a great way to begin the new year. Father John told us about the exciting ideas of hope which is around us these days. And if there's ever to be a turnaround, I think hope is the way we do it.
Taking up that turnaround feeling when you listen to the words of Pope John Paul II, he uses about face, the words he describes to the arms race. And as we take minute steps towards perhaps a disarmament with the recent summit, Father Francis Meehan tells us that it's not just a political, but a moral problem as well.
Well, here we are in Peace Valley Park in Bucks County, and it's just the perfect place to begin a reflection on world peace, issues of world peace. And I thought the best place for us to start today would be the summit meeting that we have just witnessed between President Reagan and Secretary Gorbachev. And I know there are many different opinions on that. Some are euphoric, some are pessimistic. But we have to take a look beneath the surface and look at some Christian perspectives and church teaching. We know that the popes throughout these decades have been pushing us to begin to go backwards in this arms race, to turn it around. When Pope John Paul went to Hiroshima a few years ago, he said that wonderful phrase, the world has to make an about face. An about face, that's a total change of mentality. And then someone say, well, what about the weapons for deterrence? But how many weapons do we need? Do you know we have 11,000 strategic weapons left over, and the Russians have the same? And Pope John Paul said in regard to deterrence that it's only valid if it's a step on the way to disarmament. Only valid if it's moving us towards disarmament. Otherwise, it's not acceptable. That's why this summit meeting was so important in a long-range perspective, that for the first time in the nuclear age, it turned us around. And now we're beginning 1988. What are the most important issues? Certainly this tremendous issue of Star Wars. We have to get a moral perspective on that, not just a political perspective. They say, for example, that it's a defensive system. We have to take a look at that. Many strategy analysts say that it's not just defensive, that it can be used for offensive, and certainly if it's combined with offensive weapons, it introduces a tremendous instability in the arms race, tremendous fear, and that's the last thing we want. We're all in this boat together. And how about the cost alone? $1 trillion, a congressional estimate recently. Imagine that. We can't even imagine it. $1 trillion, 1/100th, 1/1000th of that, what would that do for the famine that is now, right this minute, impending in Ethiopia? The Vatican once said that by the cost alone, the arms race causes the poor to starve. How true. And so now in this 1988, it's very important that we really reflect on these issues. This pamphlet that just came out from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia World Peace and Justice Commission on Star Wars, if you'd like to look at it, it's very exhaustive, a real study. And it really is helpful, and it really concludes that it's just a very destabilizing system that we really don't need. This year we have to work and study for peace. They're not just political issues, it's always at bottom, the deepest moral issue, the most important moral issue of our day. Right here in Peace Valley Park, we hope it's the same many years from now. So peaceful.
If you'd like more information on how to receive one of the pamphlets that Father Meehan talked about, well, contact us here at Reel to Reel. You'll be seeing our address and phone number coming up next.
There's more to come this new year, so be sure to stay with us.
Boys train for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's a very disciplined rehearsal. Lauren says the kids are versatile with lots of energy and can handle any of the pressures attached to performing.
Excuse me. I want to give blood.
You're in the right place. Come with me.
I heard about those people in the accident. I just want to help.
Great.
How are they doing anyway?
Well, last we heard, they're going to be just fine.
You know, it's a good thing you guys were there.
No. It's a good thing you are here.
Call the American Red Cross. Your neighbors need you.
We welcome your comments and suggestions and encourage you to write to us at Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19103, or call us during regular business hours at 215-668-9842.
Taking the steps to vocation a little bit later in life and nuclear disarmament are all issues that don't happen overnight. There has to be some sort of process.
Well, there is. You know, in all these statements, there are World implications are family implications, and they always begin in the home. It's the moral structure within the home that we have to address ourselves, and Mike Gallagher addresses this very much in his Arts Review segment tonight.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. A new opera has opened in New York based upon the Maurice Sendak story Where the Wild Things Are. I can't say I'm thrilled. Where the Wild Things Are, which was published nearly 25 years ago, happens to be one of my pet peeves. I am unimpressed by the 2 million copies it sold. I remain unmoved that it's been translated into 16 languages. Its hero is a small boy named Max. Max is world-class obnoxious. After a full day of nasty stunts, including being mean to his poor sister, the little brat is sent to bed without dinner. From his bedroom, however, Max launches off into a long sea voyage to the place where, you've got it, where the wild things are. The wild things are a frightful assortment of creatures, and they are bad. But bad as they are, our Max is badder yet. So they forthwith set Max up as his badness the king, and he rules right badly until it's time to go back to the old bedroom where his mother has his dinner waiting for him all nice and warm. Max has been rewarded for his badness, both in fantasy and reality. What's the charm of this story? Why has it sold nearly 2 million copies? Well, aside from the appeal of Sendak's drawings, an appeal which I personally have no trouble whatsoever resisting, I think the biggest selling point of Where the Wild Things Are is that it has no moral. To give a child a book with a moral, you see, is something that no sophisticated mother or father, much less aunt or uncle, would dream of doing, and this has been true for about 20 years. So books like Where the Wild Things Are, and much worse, Shel Silverstein's A Light in the Attic, have become bestsellers. The latter is a collection of mostly cynical little ditties, one of which has a child praying thus: "If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my toys to break." He doesn't want anybody else to play with them. We're hearing a lot of talk about teaching moral values in school, but how about outside of school too? Maybe parents could begin by taking a closer look at those classics aimed at their children, the kind that hip at any price uncles and aunts love to buy as presents. I'm Mike Gallagher for Arts Review.
We have surely been around the horn, from the basic ideas of religious vocation to world peace to children and violence and all these things. It's a hard thing to come from my idea of rock music to a new idea.
Well, speaking of music, we're going to be having a wonderful look at a city rich in musical heritage, and that's got to be Vienna, Austria. When you think of the threads of Mozart and Beethoven and Schubert, you must also think of the Vienna Boys Choir. For 5 centuries, they've been singing in Vienna.
When you think of the Vienna Choir Boys, you tend to think of rich, established tradition. For nearly 5 centuries, the choir has enchanted millions with the charm and excellence of their music making. The Vienna Choir Boys were founded by imperial decree in 1498 by Emperor Maximilian I to fulfill his wish to have a choir in the imperial chapel. And the fine Austrian musical tradition continues today. Meet 13-year-old Peter. They do not use last names in dealing with the public or media. He was born in Frankfurt, Germany. He tells us what he likes best about the choir.
It's the tours and when you have real big concert halls that are full. It's fun to sing and with lots of people.
Before becoming accepted into the choir, the boys must enroll in a 2-year preparatory program where they receive special voice lessons and ear training. Then they are screened for admission into available choir positions. There is a 4-year maximum limit for each boy. The acceptance age starts at 9. Peter is in his last year. Although the Vienna tradition has included the likes of Mozart and Schubert, Peter says he wants to be a doctor when he gets older. In his spare time, he enjoys playing soccer and listening to Beatles music. Lawrence Awashko is the conductor of the choir. He's from Ottawa, Canada, but studied in Vienna for 5 years. This group has been on a 3-month tour since early January. Lawrence has been conductor since September of last year.
They're a challenge. It's very rewarding. They have a great deal of energy and they give an awful lot.
The boys train for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's a very disciplined rehearsal. Lawrence says the kids are versatile with lots of energy and can handle any of the pressures attached to performing. They end up cramming a normal 6-month school year into 3 months. Lawrence tells us what he likes best about being a conductor.
I think that making music the music with the boys.
And the thing you like the least?
Having to get up in the morning.
Don't we all? There are 4 different choirs. Usually 2 are away on tour at the same time. The Vienna Choir Boys first visited the United States in 1932. They've been back 39 times. They've also completed numerous worldwide tours and have been received by several popes. Lawrence tells us what the highlight has been so far for him.
The exposure to a great tradition of the Vienna Choir Boys.
And that tradition is known around the world.
Correct, yeah.
And probably always will be.
We hope so.
We'll be continuing next week with our series on the candidates for vocations, and one question that we asked all of them was there one moment when you knew?
Not for me. No, I can honestly say my vocation kind of gradually developed. I can't remember one specific moment when it hit.
I think I have a moment. I didn't make the basketball team in high school, and then the Christian Brothers got a hold of me then and started me toward a vocation.
But they knew you weren't going to make the Sixers.
You could have been a 76er, right? And now you're a priest. Oh, well. You never know what you'll find out next week on Reel to Reel, but we will be continuing our series on vocations with the Diocese of Camden, this time looking at 2 women going to the Sisters of St. Joseph and the Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters.
Dr. Richard Fitzgibbons will be back with us again to talk about marriage and marriage problems, especially who controls in a marriage.
And Monsignor Daniel Murray will give us the final part of his answer on how Catholics should see the Bible. That's From the Pulpit segment. And from the pulpit, we move to the baptismal font. We'll have a nice piece on baptism explaining the meaning behind the motions in that sacrament.
So until next week, please do take care.
Good night and God bless you.
Good night. See you next week.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen Travel of Media, PA. Phone area 215-565-7070.